It's just so satisfying. Okay, I'm totally making this. It's just so clicky. And if you love the sound of those, you'll darn tootin' love the sound of this one. Be careful. Hey, this is Frankie with Prairie Home Crafts. If you like clicking buttons as much as most humans do me a favor. Click those like and subscribe buttons, then saddle up with me. And let's get to making some of them clickety-clacking fidget clickers. Okay, here's the plan. And some of the more specific tools you'll need to make these little gadgets. As per the usual, I'll include a link to download a PDF file of the plan, as well as links to the keyboard switches in the video description below. Now, let's get cracking. Step 1. Lumber shopping. Some people go to the local big box store, exotic wood dealers, or just use scraps, which I do recommend for this project. But I go to the back corner of my yard. Call this Milwaukee landscaping. It's faster than a handsaw, and the sound makes the neighbors really nervous. And today, it has rendered us a dead branch for some crazy overgrown evergreen bush thing growing back here. I've made many bowls from this stuff. The wood has the hardness of walnut, awesome grain patterning, and a beautiful amber color when it's finished. I still have no idea what it's called, though. Sorry. So, as it turns out, even at my age, I still like to play with sticks. Except now I like to help them reach their full potential by introducing them to my bandsaw. I'm going to slice off a piece that we can work with and then use the rest of that stick to shake at the neighbor kids when they're doing weird stuff behind my shed. We're going to use a hole saw here to find the button that's hidden inside this branch. It's like an archaeological dig, but with more sawdust and less job security for my fingers. I'm using a 1-inch outside diameter hole saw with no arbor. Arbor's fancy talk for the drill bit in the middle of a hole saw. This leaves us with a circle that's just under 7/8 of an inch in diameter. It's the perfect size for a thumb or a trampoline for ants. I'm giving this branch 2 parallel faces so that we can eventually cut out the button burrow, as I call it. Achieving this on a crooked branch is 10% measurement and about 90% spiritual engineering, relying on faith, bad eyesight, and the bandsaw fence. Now we're about to bore out the button burrow, and we are using a 7/8 inch Forstner bit for this. We got to make sure that we don't drill out through the bottom. If we do it right, the switch will fit perfectly. If we do it wrong, it's just going to be like an outhouse for a birdhouse. Although the birds around here seem to prefer my front porch for that activity just fine. Now swap bits to make a 5/32 inch hole for the switch nub. This will center the switch inside the button burrow perfectly when we install it later. Removing the 2 tiny terminals on the bottom of the switch with some needle nose pliers, and then test fitting it. And it's not quite right, so we need to drill a little bit farther down and then put that little nubski hole in there again. And what do you know? Second time's a charm. Or is it third time's a charm? Woodworking, it's second time's a charm. We'll go with that. Here we use an 1.5-inch hole saw with no arbor to cut completely through our branch cookie cutoff and free our button burrow. It got jammed in there, so I had to hammer it out. There it is. We had a little mishap, but nothing we can't fix with some woodworking prowess and a little CA glue. We'll fill it in on the other side to make it look good when we get to the sanding. So it's time to get into the sanding and shaping of this thing, and we're aiming for artisanal smooth for a really good feel in your hands, not I found this in the bushes in the backyard kind of a feel. So Yeah, we're going to work this around the disc sander, sand the bottom, sand the top, get it roughed into shape, and then we're going to sand this from 120, 150, 180 down to 240 before we do a first coat of finish. So this is obviously the most time-consuming part of this entire project, which is pretty fast. Oh yeah, the button. I forgot about the button. It's probably the most dangerous part. Try your best to keep your fingertips not sanded down to that first knuckle. But any pro can handle a sander like this and still have fingernails when they're done. Here I used hand sanding to round over those sharp corners on the top and the bottom. And then we got to fixing that crack on the outside with just some glue and sawdust and more sanding. But in the end, you'll see it worked out pretty nicely. A little mishap, nothing we can't handle. All right, look at that. As good as any other stick you can find in the yard. At this point, I was really sick sanding by hand, so I turned my random orbital sander upside down, clamped it to my bench, and then made quick work of this project. Have any of you ever done this, or do you have any other fun little hacks like this to share? I would love to hear about them in the comments. Anything to ease the strife of the average woodworker is a blessing. Let me know. Before assembling this fun little gadget, I found it best to make a super shallow reference notch in the exact center of the button's underside. This will actually force the button to rest perfectly centered on the blue cross of the switching mechanism. So I made almost like a tiny dimple in there for that. Time for the finish. For small bits like this, I prefer Tung oil, because it's super easy to apply and doesn't smell like imminent death. The only setback is that you definitely need at least 2 coats, and you have to wait at least a day or more between coats. But it's as simple as rub it on and rub it off. Okay, time for that second coat. But prior to that, I am lightly sanding everything with a 320 grit sanding sponge. I'm only doing 2 coats on this little gadget, but if you continue after this point to wet sand with Tung oil, using grits from 400, 600, 800 up to 1000, you will get an amazingly smooth satin professional feeling finish. It's the same process here. Just wipe it on, wipe it off, and let it dry. We are now in the final throes. Here we use the glue of no return. CA glue is like diamonds, and diamonds are forever. Once that switch goes in, it is never coming out. But we have our references, perfect places for the glue, and boom, there you have it. Super smooth and super clicky. Those sound like completely opposing ideas, kind of like sawdust and post-nasal drip, but it's just so good. Listen to it. Thanks for sticking with me so far, and if you still love clicking buttons, then click those like and subscribe buttons and stick with me for the next bit, where we get super explosive. And now, let's build a completely unnecessary, highly satisfying, absolutely do not press this wooden TNT detonator. Step 1, take a perfectly innocent scrap of 2x4 and turn it into something that might get you questioned at an airport. Nothing suspicious here, just making a tiny wooden cube of doom. I need a plunger, because every bad decision deserves a very bad button to execute such an activity. And we're doing this on a little bit more scrap 2x4. Drilling a center hole, because we're going to need a T-bar handle to go into that, and then using that 1-inch hole saw with no arbor to make a slightly smaller than 7/8 inch button plunger. I actually made a couple here, and you can see how we're going to cut them out on the table saw by driving it through until they just plunk, pop right out. Here, listen to this sound. Plunk. Boop. Could I have just used the bandsaw? Sure, but where's the drama in that? Let's get explosive here. Okay. The hole is where the magic happens, and by magic, I mean clicky noises that release dopamine hits. And we want to make sure we don't drill through the bottom, so we are going to use our drill stop on this. Again, we also need to make a little nub hole for a little nubski, so our switch will fit in there and be perfectly centered. Now I'm making the classic T-bar handle, because if you're going to press something you shouldn't, you want good ergonomics. To make this, I'm using a 3/16 inch dowel cut down to 2 inches for the rod between the T-bar and the plunger, and then a 3/8 inch dowel cut to about 1.5 inches for the T-bar handle. To attach the T-bar to the rod, we need to drill a 3/16 inch hole directly through the middle of our 3/8 inch dowel. Then we just need to hammer it in there. So we've got our T-handle, we've got our rod and our plunger, and hopefully we'll just fit real nice and snug. I'm not even using glue because it should fit real tight. One word, I did not hammer it flush because I'd like a little reference for when I glue it to the switch. Now let's make it look like it ought to look when a coyote is trying to get some tasty Roadrunner lunch. A little black for the box, a little gray for the switch, and some red for that you already know you shouldn't touch it kind of a vibe. And now for the star of the show, the keyboard switch, because nothing says craftsmanship like stealing some piece of plastic from your desk and shoving it inside your project. And a little CA glue for that permanent perfection. Oh yeah, now we have a fully functional bad idea. This must be how villains relax after a long day. Completely harmless, deeply satisfying, yet mildly concerning. I just have to say, I really loved making this project. It was super quick, fun, And I've actually been carrying this branch clicker around with me ever since I made it, and have easily clicked it several thousand times because it's so addicting. As you see, I made a couple of them, and then I also actually made one out of 3/4 inch oak just to see if it would fit. It was tight, almost drilled through the bottom, but it's doable if you have some. And the TNT clickers, kids love. So I hope you enjoyed this and give this one a shot. I will include everything you need in the description below. And hey, this is Frankie from Prairie Home Crafts. Thanks for sticking with me, and like and subscribe if you want to see more goofy things that pop up in my head being made into wood projects. All right, see you on the next one.